Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to CARES, another edition of the Daily Dose. I'm Danette Sagari Mass, nonprofit attorney at CARE, and your host for this afternoon. This is a daily program. We hope that you're going to join us again here every day in Ramadan at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We will replay this video at our Facebook page in the evening as well. CARE has expanded its programs to include this for you, to bring you closer to the people and the stories within our community during this pandemic and trial. First of all, I want to say Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. May, inshallah, your Ramadan is filled with renewed direction and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hopefully everyone had a restorative weekend of, praying Tarawih in their homes and waking up for tahajjud. It's a difficult time because, we're doing Ramadan in a way that we've never done it before. But inshallah, hopefully you feel that vigor in your home and in your community, and you feel closer to it through programs like this. So all praise belongs to Allah. Through His mercy, we have the blessing of welcoming another Ramadan. Today, we are so blessed to have Laila El-Haddad with us. She's an award-winning Palestinian author, social activist, political analyst, journalist, and my friend. I just want to say a few things about her. She frequently speaks on the situation in Gaza, the intersection of food and politics, her own personal journey as a Palestinian mother and journalist, as well as on contemporary Islam. She has written for numerous newspapers and magazines and has appeared on many international broadcasting networks, including NPR, CNN, Al Jazeera. She's the author also of Gaza Mom, Palestine, Politics, Parenting, and Everything in Between, and co-author of the critically acclaimed Gaza Kitchen, a Palestinian Culinary Journey, and the recipient of the Best Arab Cuisine Book Award for Gourmand magazine and a finalist at the 2013 MEMO Palestine Book Award. Through her work as a writer and documentarian, Leila provides much needed insight into the human experience of the region. In 2014, she was featured in a CNN program, Parts Unknown, with celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain. I'm sure you've heard of that show. In the episode titled Jerusalem, the West Bank in Gaza, she served as his guide in the Gaza Strip, marking the first time a mainstream American audience has seen Gaza in this ordinary, humorous, and humane light. It was a great program. If you haven't seen it, get online. I think it's probably on Netflix right now. It was a great episode. Leila also has a master's in public policy from Harvard Kennedy School in 2002. And in her spare time, she serves the refugee community here in Maryland and advocates for Palestinian rights through her involvement in various community activities. Born in Kuwait to Palestinian parents, she currently lives in Maryland with her husband and 4 children. Leila, are you there?
I am.
Leila, first of all, you have to update your bio online.
Which bio? Because I thought I did update it.
It says you have 3 kids. You need to update it.
I know. All I kept thinking when you were reading the bio was like, none of that matters. Oh, I feel like all I've been doing for 2 years is my 2-year-old because she's so,
well, you left her off, so you need to go in and insert her. She's gonna have her feelings very hurt. Anyway, how are you doing right now?
Good. Aside from seeing the reflection of my very messy office in the back, I'm like, oh my God,
But it's okay, because why is it messy? What are you doing right now? I know the project, but tell everybody, all of our viewers.
Yeah, inshallah, we're taking advantage of the our sheltering in place to redo our office. So we're doing a built-in office, so that's why. So.
And look at all the books you have behind you, mashallah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Speaking of books, you wrote the Gaza Kitchen, and we really want to talk about food today, but not just, recipes for food, right. But really about, the intersection of food identity, politics, some of your favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Misappropriating food even. First, I want to ask you, Leila, how do you use food in your advocacy?
That's a really good question. And it's a nice one to be asked because I often sort of, navigate between 2 worlds, which is sort of the strictly culinary world and then sort of the political or the world of advocacy. And it's very hard for most people to understand that there actually exists sort of a intersection between those 2. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes frustrating to me because oftentimes people can view you as sort of, or your work as very frivolous, if they view it as strictly culinary, and then, or they view you as someone who's not necessarily an expert in that field if you're coming from a political background. So, to answer that question, I can explain how a little bit quickly about how I got interested in this, or how the work came about. And it was actually precisely because of this sort of continuous struggle that I had of trying to find the best way to convey to mainstream audiences the reality that is Gaza, specifically in Palestine at large, after having worked there for years as a journalist and sort of feeling somewhat jaded and ineffective at conveying what was going on, despite my years of working there and writing about the news and interviewing people and so on and so forth. Like, no amount of personal interest stories were going to work. And I remember having this sort of pivotal conversation with a very close friend who was Egyptian, and as most of you know, Egypt neighbors the Gaza Strip, and even she didn't quite understand what the deal was with the constant border closures and the fact that we couldn't just fly into Gaza. And she said something like, well, you guys are probably used to this by now. And so I was like, no, we're not. We're never become used to this. And if somebody so close to me didn't understand it, I felt like, how could I expect somebody that was, X amount removed from the situation, maybe in the US or who knows where, to understand it. And so that sort of changed my take on matters. And I began to write a blog that I kept for many years when my son, who's now 16 and driving me totally bonkers, when he was,
I can't relate at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
And when he was my now 2-year-old's age, I had this blog that I would write, and it was all just about sort of mothering and my experiences mothering under occupation. And it got a lot of attention, and I was like, I didn't think it would. And that made me realize that maybe taking this approach of, bringing in people through sort of a back door or window to the situation would be more effective. And then eventually, I started to, I had always had an interest at a young age in food in particular, as a means of, getting in touch with my own identity and culture, especially at a time growing up, overseas. I was born in Kuwait, as you mentioned, lived in Saudi Arabia, then Bahrain. We would go to Palestine, but sort of every year or every other year. And we always felt a little bit sort of, far removed from it. And so food was one way that I could sort of reconnect and also rediscover a lot of what was, invisibilized in terms of our own history and sort of culinary heritage. And food is one great way, sort of a stepping stone, a narrative device that you can learn about all of that.
Can we talk about that, invisibilize? I like that. Yeah. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it and run with it. I like it. Okay.
It's actually commonly used in a lot of, in this kind of literature when it comes to sort of indigenous food justice and advocacy. In the US, at least, it's used in Black communities and in Native American communities and in Palestinian communities as well. So anyway, so in brief, that's how I got to writing that.
How have you used the book as a way of, communicating to those who, read it, that these are Gazan dishes or these are Palestinian dishes.
Right.
Oftentimes we can get on TV and we see culinary shows and we find out that hummus or, tabbouleh or whatever is described as an Israeli food.
Right.
So, so how has this book helped bridge that gap in understanding?
Well, I would like to think it made a pretty big impact, which is something I'm very proud of, because at the time that the initial, we're actually working, we had just finished the third draft before the whole COVID-19 thing. But the third edition is coming out soon, we hope. Yeah, so that's exciting. But when the first edition came out, rather, I think 2013, there was really no Palestinian cookbooks, and certainly none of this nature that kind of tackle head on the political situation in the market. It was kind of a very novel thing, and it had a lot of people kind of scratching their heads, like, what is this exactly? Is this a cookbook? Is this a manifesto? Like, they didn't understand. But it encouraged, I see it over and over, which makes me very happy. It encouraged a lot of other authors to come out and kind of own this, you know what I mean? Like, find their voice, own the story, and write about this, rather than using sort of other legitimizing, characters or voices to write their stories for them, which is something that's kind of, I think, defines a lot of my work. Is I always tell people when they say, what advice do you give us? I say, you need to own your story, don't rely on someone else to tell it for you. No matter how insignificant you might think it is, it is still a story that needs to be shared. So, most recent, there's a whole line of other Palestinian authors that came out after us that wrote, including Judy Kella, from Palestine on a Plate, and Beladi. And then you had most recently Sami Tamimi, who works closely with Yotam Ottolenghi, the Israeli-British chef. But he just came out with his own book called Philistine, that's making the waves as well. And they all say, like, they all cite and they say, had it not been, I'm sorry, I told him not to come in here. Yusuf. Oh my God, why? Close the door. I swear I told him 3 separate times. No, and without consequence. He's like in his pajamas. He's like,
I'm going to tell on myself. While we were doing the show, I was doing like this to one of my kids because they were coming over here. So I feel you. Okay.
Anyway, what was I saying? Right. So, and they all frequently say, like, had it not been for this book. So that's something that I feel like, okay, if I die tomorrow, I feel like I've made my little dent or my contribution.
For sure.
And I am really proud of that because, it's not that easy. It happened very serendipitously. And I would like to say with a lot of barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it is really not that easy to be able to pull something like that off. And it was a struggle because we had a really good, Quaker publisher, Just World Books, who was really keen to like take this on, but most publishers were like, yeah, right, we're not getting near that. You know what I mean? And anytime they would hear Palestine or like anything that they deemed quote unquote controversial in the book, they were like, no, just give us the food. We don't want the politics. But recently it's become quite like, quite sort of the thing, right, to do is to actually tackle things head on. With the late Anthony Bourdain, that was his thing. You have
that was a great show. Can you pause there for a second? For any of our viewers who haven't seen that show, where can they get it right now? I mentioned Netflix. I have no idea, but
yes, that's true. You can get it on Netflix. Yeah,
that was a great show. I love how you go into people's lives. You were in everyday kitchens. You even have your child, like you walk around with her. It's just adorable how it's just very, very real. Very
well, that's kind of what I like to do, but sort of struggle with now since I have a 2-year-old. I'm just gonna lose my mind. I feel like, man, I need to get it together. But anyway, that's kind of like what I like to think I do best. And I think really people can relate to the most, right? Is going into ordinary lives and kitchens and having these very sort of ordinary conversations, because it's in those sort of ordinary moments that you can glean the most out of people's struggles and relate to them the most, I like to think. And it's actually an approach I'm trying to take now with a new, it's still on paper, hasn't like officially started, but a book that I'm doing with actually, which might be of interest to your audiences, with Muslim Americans, right? So I actually have a publisher who's already signed us on, and it would be sort of akin, it was sort of like a Muslim American culinary journey. But again, the idea isn't just recipes, right? It would be sort of conversations and profiles with different immigrant communities and original sort of Muslim, long-standing Muslim communities, right? Not just.
Hold that thought for me. I want to hear more about that because it's really important. Sure. I'm dying to ask you a question. Okay, you described the Gaza Kitchen as a feminist project, and we talked a little. You said something earlier about it gets frivolized, the cooking, right? What did you mean by that?
So it was largely, I think actually my co-author is the one that used that terminology, but the idea is that it was more than sort of a feminist, it was more of a female centric, right? So we wanted to center women's voices and roles in the project. There certainly are a lot of male, characters that we interviewed and so on, but we really wanted the focus to be on women, because we felt like, especially when it comes to Palestine, they are sort of the ultimate, the sort of the bedrock, right? That holds the family together, the society together. Their role is pivotal to being able to perpetuate the culture and the history, and so on and so forth. At a time when, since 1967, I think something like 1 in 4 Palestinian men have been incarcerated, have been political prisoners at any one point in time. So then what happens, to the family in the absence of the male, and additionally, in the past decade in Gaza, women actually have largely been, the majority of the breadwinners have been women, right? So that's just a fact, right? A reality. So it was in that sense that I think, and their voices tend, of course, again, to use that word, be invisibilized, but they are not centered, right? And they're not the ones that you ordinarily hear, or if they are, they're very caricatured, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really what we thought. And I think it surprised a lot of readers. I mean, even I was sometimes like surprised. I had my own biases and stereotypes, right? Coming from a more urban, Palestinian family. My grandfather was a blacksmith, thus the name Al-Haddad, so kind of a very working class, but they weren't farmers or falahin or anything like that. So I had my own kind of biases, and I would go certain places and be like blown away, like, oh, that's not what I expected. And so it was very instructive for me, I think, to kind of set my own, assumptions aside and just let them do the speaking and hear what they have to say.
By the way, I just want all of our viewers to know, Leila, that you are a very good cook. You're obviously a great orator, a great writer, a great.
Tell my kids that, because
you're
every day they complain about what I make. And I'm like,
no, let me tell a story, okay? I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually at your house. Said, oh, I got to get home. I need to cook. And you said, no, just stay. I'll give you my leftovers. Why don't you take home leftovers? And
I do remember this, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, leftovers. And so I took your leftovers home, and my family went crazy for your leftovers. So like even your leftovers are delicious. Sometimes we watch shows or read books. We don't know, can these people really cook, or is it just pictures? But everybody, Leila can really cook.
Well, I want to qualify that though by saying thank you, by the way. It's very validating, because every day I'm like knocking my head against the wall. The kids are like, nah, we're going to go make pot stickers, or no, we're going to heat up a frozen pizza. It's like, I mean, the sad reality is I often only get to like enjoy my own, especially like the authentic Gazan cuisine, when like my husband's out of town or the kids aren't there and I just want to cook for myself, because like they don't have an appreciation for it,
Right.
I mean, to be fair,
a deep appreciation.
I wish you were my neighbor, because I would always shove off my leftovers to Pauline when she was around. So,
but Pauline is a friend, yeah. Hello,
yes,
she's watching.
Yes. But I mean, the thing is, you were saying, oh, she can cook. But what I always like to remind people, sometimes I get asked a question, like when I recently did an interview with, I'm really bad at like self-promotion or publicizing. I forgot to post this one, but it was pretty cool. It was with Vogue Arabia. And it was lots of fun. And they asked me a question like, what's the most surprising thing, or what's the one thing people wouldn't expect to hear? And I was like, actually that, I sometimes sort of have a geek moment where something actually works as a way it's supposed to. Like if I flip something perfect, like a matluba, right? A Palestinian rice dish, and it flips perfectly, I get really excited. Or if something works out the way it's supposed to, I just get, because I didn't grow up cooking like, by my grandmother's side, or my mother being like, let's wrap grape leaves together. My mother was a professional working woman. She was a physician, and,
busy.
And what's that? Yeah, and so none of that happened around the house. And my grandmother, I like to remind people, was also a very sort of staunch feminist, and she was a teacher, superintendent of all the schools in Gaza at one point. And if I ever dared ask her about how to make something, and she was herself of mixed Syrian Kurdish ancestry and Circassian ancestry, but she would go nuts. Like, she associated like, cooking with domesticity, right? And so it was like, is that all you think I'm good for? Like, so I didn't know how to cook. These things didn't come natural to me. It's like the way that some people will just, garnish a plate of hummus and it looks amazing, or like, oh, this old thing, or, you ask how to, like, I remember frequently asking people and doing the research for the book, how do you make this? And they're like, oh, easy. You just put, whatever spices you want, and then you do this. And I'm like, no, you need to be specific. I don't know what you mean. And so it did take self-trained maybe, but things don't necessarily come naturally to me. I love doing it. It's very therapeutic. I enjoy it, but it's not as though, I still get, really excited when something actually works the way it's supposed to. Let's put it that way.
It is a great way of injecting, being in a diaspora communities, giving your children, centering them with the experience and immersing them. I know my children, we live in we have a bicultural home, biracial. My husband's from Morocco. My children are Moroccan. So very early on, I decided that I was going to get really good at cooking Moroccan food, because it's a way of bringing that, culture to them, right? Even though I'm not Moroccan, it's ironic that I'm
honorary. I've had your tagines before, so you passed the test. Yeah.
I passed the test. Yeah, because I really thought that time investment was important,
It is, yeah.
because and now my daughter is picking up some of the foods, and I don't think that's I actually consider myself a feminist. I say I'm not shy about that word, or female centric or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is a particular month when a lot of women, I'm not saying that men are in the kitchen too. We know that, mashallah, even my husband gets in the kitchen. He's a great cook, but a lot of women are producing the flavors, the smells, that, cultural, that connection to home and hearth,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um, right now, so it's,
Yeah, and I don't think we can underestimate that. I mean, something that I like to do is we've been talking a lot about gardening, and I know I owe you
yes.
something about that. But, I like to take it all the way sort of from, as they say, from farm to table, and try to
Yeah.
trace the connection of, I have a friend who runs Palestinian heirloom seed library, which is a really
Hmm.
cool project. And she preserves like ancient seeds when a lot of them are being threatened. And every now and then she'll send me some. And I, as an experiment, not everything goes, but the kids and I will try to grow them. And it's a kind of really cool experience. I'll say to them, like, this same variety of wheat is the one that grows in Palestine from the same seed, and we'll grow it
Hmm.
together and, see what happens, and then take it, and then we'll learn how to make something from it. Sometimes it's just sort of a, more of a practical experiment than something, we
Hmm.
made
Hmm.
frika once, right? We took the wheat and we charted, and we saw how we do the whole thing. So, it's sometimes gets a little crazy. Like we'll make menaish, and of course there'll be flour flying everywhere, and I know I'm going to regret it later, but but it's something that they
Yeah.
cherish. And
And remember,
yeah.
yeah, mashallah.
um,
Well, talk about the thing that I cut you off earlier, because I
yeah,
wanted to ask about the female centric aspect of the Gaza Kitchen.
yeah, yeah.
But tell us about the new project, Muslim American culture. Uh, I don't know if this is what the project is about, but I think something that's unique to American Muslim identity is how we associate each other's flavors with aspects of like our Ramadan cultural like experience. So biryani, kanafa. My daughter is like really good at making kanafa now. You know,
I'm
she's.
the knafa queen. This is the one thing I can tell you
I
with
don't know, you have to taste it. I'm going to give you
everybody
that.
who's had my knafa will say without doubt.
I'm going to give you that. But mashallah, women like you inspire her though to make that, and she associates it with Ramadan,
Right.
right? So
And I feel so bad we never got to do the Girl Scout. I was thinking maybe we could do it on Zoom.
inshallah. But kanafa, I mean, it's not Moroccan at all,
Yeah.
right? The cheese even, you can't find it easily in the market, right? So it's strictly, it's something, from another culture, but that she associates it with Ramadan as an
Right.
American Muslim.
Yes, absolutely. And this is exactly why I first got interested in this idea. And I don't know if you got a chance to read the article that I wrote. It was a few years ago, but it's still very
I remember,
relevant
yeah.
for
Mhm.
Aramco World
Yeah.
magazine. But it was, I think it was called a Baltimore potluck iftar, and it
Mhm.
was, and I just wanted to tease the idea with the editor to see if it had the potential of eventually being turned into a book. And he
Mhm.
like loved it. I was like, I don't know if you think this is interesting or not, but I always thought it was just what you were saying, kind of cool that we have such a, for lack of a better word, diverse community, Muslim American community. And I feel like only in the US during Ramadan, can you experience such a vast, wide array of, you know, flavor, tastes and flavors and cultures, sort of under one tent, for lack of
Yeah.
pun intended, right? And he was like, you're right. And so we did this thing where we invited, like, it was nuts, like 40 families, I think, and everybody brought something sort of representative of either they grew up with or they make it for iftar. And
Mhm.
we had everything from like an Italian American to, jerk chicken from the Caribbean to Malaysian to, um, our, oh yeah, that's the, and we had another very important segment, African American Muslim cuisine, which is something very few of us are
Mhm.
familiar with, right? And that's why I want to devote a significant section of the book to that, because I think that's, to me, that was the most interesting, because, early African American Muslims under the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad had written a whole, I don't know if you know, but a whole sort of booklet on, I think it was called On How to Eat Well, trying to sort of steer them away from what he deemed as slave foods, right, to
Mhm.
sort of a new kind of sort of clean eating. And eventually, the Orthodox Muslims, that emerged from that movement sort of took a more middle ground approach, right? A little bit of here, a little bit of there, but it still shaped the way that they eat till this day. So it's really interesting to me. And so this is, I view it as food as a way to tell these stories.
We have
right?
to mention bean pie, right? I mean, talking
Yes,
about,
we actually had our, friends Fatima and Farida make bean pie for that article. So that was really cool. And my introduction actually to Islam in the US when I first came here when I was 18 in North Carolina was through the WD Muhammad community. Students that were with me, we were a very small group, but most of them were there from the Atlanta region, grew up in the Sarah Clara Muhammad schools there. So that was their first experience, I think, dealing with a sort of a Muslim of Arab origin, and my first experience dealing with African-American Muslims from that community. So it was really a great experience, and that I've brought with me till this day. So this is what I hope to do, is tell these stories that go beyond the sensationalist headlines, right, of Muslim America through food.
Yeah, the potluck.
It's a large project. So if anyone out there is willing to interested in helping, definitely drop me a line.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
The potluck is I don't know if it's distinctly American. I'm not sure. I know it's popular in other communities. I have a colleague at CARE who's Quaker, and she said I think she said that they invented it. I don't know.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
I will say it's considered a kind of rude in Arab culture.
Right.
So you wouldn't, I don't.
But we do it. I mean, you and I, our family celebrate Eid together most of the time. And so there's always a potluck.
Yes.
Feature.
Here, right? But I mean, in the Middle East, if you were to ever, because I remember once I was going to make something and take it. I don't know. We were I don't know if it was my husband's family. They're very traditional. And they were like, no, what are you doing? You don't make and take something to someone's house. That's as though you're telling them that your food isn't good. And so I was like, oh, so I view it as a very American thing. I don't know. It might have,
But that's definitely, I think, the one of the ways that our kids get introduced to all of these different types of foods, and then they end up associating it, with Ramadan.
Absolutely, yeah. I like to think so. I mean, I still have very fond memories of that photo shoot. Was a lot of fun to do, and out of that came the whole lakefront iftars that we do. As you know, every year, not this year sadly, but we try to do a couple of iftars in the area where we live, in the Columbia, Maryland lakefront, and
the white nights, I believe, right?
Right, we do them in the middle of Ramadan on the white nights, and everybody comes out with their like lanterns and glow sticks and whatever. Everybody brings a dish, and we just kind of spread out. And so many people, as a result of that, have like stopped by, curious, wondered what's going on, asked us. And, and out of that sprang, we were supposed to do this year, I co-founded a Muslim women's organization here called Nia, which you might have heard about, Nia Maryland, with 3 of our friends. And we were supposed to launch by doing a big community, an iftar, an outdoor iftar, like the open table concept, if you've ever heard of that. Inviting different members of the non-Muslim community to sit and partake in an iftar, and and sort of have ambassadors and young people talk to them about.
That's another thing can you talk about that project a little bit more? Creating opportunities for entrepreneurship in the Syrian refugee community.
Yeah, it's it's an experience that taught me a lot. It was really, in some sense, it was very rewarding, but also very frustrating. But so yeah, essentially what happened is we got this large wave of Syrian refugees several years ago. I want to say it was because I was 4 years ago maybe, and we learned about it unexpectedly. I think somebody said, by the way, a Moroccan member of our community, did you know that there's a bunch of families that just came and they are continuing to come? And so what happens is a lot of these families were brought in through the IRC or other organizations, and either forced to repay their ticket, or, I mean, they were told, but I mean, people just assume they come here, everything is laid out for them on a red carpet, but they have to repay their plane tickets. They're already riddled with debt from the moment they come. They only are provided with like 3 months of housing, and then they have to start paying it themselves, have very limited, vocational or other skills and low language skills. And so they were really strapped, for the first year. It was really tough. And a lot of them might have expected it might have been something like Europe, where there was more of a social safety net there, but there wasn't. And so the community stepped in. My husband and others in the community formed an organization called Bridge America, where they were helping kind of bridge that gap between what was provided and what wasn't. But it was still month to month. A lot of them were requesting help with paying bills or whatever. And so I was just trying to think in the immediate sense, what's one way they can make some immediate cash and something that they can do that they're good at. And, you know, I know that from experience, Syrians are really good at cooking, the sort of refined, the art, the culinary art of, right? Like I was talking about the presentation and making those sort of impossibly laborious things like, you know, stuffed grape leaves and teeny tiny like dumplings and all that. They're really good at. And so I offered them the chance to, you know, do you guys, is this something you'd be interested in? And so we started a project called at that time, the Aleppo Kitchen, which was kind of a home-based catering where they were taking orders. First, some of them at mosques, some from their houses. Now a lot of training had to be involved, you know, and I wasn't, it was like me, right, myself. I wasn't, so this was part of my frustration. And I was like, after that, got pregnant, and it was really tough. It's not like you hear these stories about like, I think, you know, nonprofits doing this. And what you don't realize is there's like a whole funding mechanism and like a staff, but when you don't have that, it's very hard, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, I think it was really rewarding for me and for them. For, you know, a couple of them are still sort of took off independently after that, which was great. And they learned a lot. You know, one of them has her own business that we try to support, Damascus Kitchen. So it was great because they were able to make some immediate money, help their family with the finances. And also it's very dignifying, right? To be able to be productive, produce something, feel in a very, you know, enabling as well. So
again, female centric, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, because, and yeah, and I mean, and all, you know, a lot of NGOs will tell you from having been in the business for a long time that it's no secret that women are more financially responsible than men. And if given the chance, like for microloan projects and things like that, they usually like to focus that on women and loan them to women, not to men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, oh wow, we kept you over time. I hope that's okay. Mashallah.
No, it's great. Trust me, it's better than what I would probably be doing, which is like chasing kids or decluttering or like, you know, something like that.
You are a powerhouse of knowledge. I'm very blessed to know you, and I'm glad that that our viewers had a chance to spend some time with you. Where can we find your book, your latest book? The third edition is coming out, but the second edition.
So, you know, for people who, I'm just looking now to see if there's, because I know that my publisher actually ran out of copies, but I want to see if Amazon has any copies left. And for people who are in my immediate community in Maryland, and actually even if you aren't, I have a few copies I'm happy to sign, and you know, you could buy them from me directly. Otherwise, I'm trying to
link in the comments in our Facebook for this video for anybody watching.
Yeah, and there are, I think, a few. Oh no, wait, it says it's currently unavailable, is it? No, wait, there are a few copies left, I think, on Amazon for those who are interested. And then again, if anyone wants a personally signed copy, I'm happy to make that happen. Do you want me to put my email or what?
Yeah, do that.
Wait, to where? I'm on the chat or
on the Zoom chat. Yeah.
We'll get it out to them. I wasn't sure what, you know.
I love the informality of you, Leila. I love so many things about you, mashallah. You're so intelligent, but so real, so down to earth.
This is me. Oh man, most days I'm like, what's happened? What have I become? Like, I'm just sitting here like picking up dirty socks and tripping over like, you know, toys.
You're an awesome mom, and you know, an awesome cook, and an author, you know, political analyst, just everything.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, I do want to say, I think it's so important. How do I get rid of this chat? It's so important, I think, to be able to support, you know, female entrepreneurs in our community and those who are self-employed, or, you know, whether as panelists, whether by supporting their work, whether as giving them, I think we sort of underestimate, but giving them a chance, either a platform to speak or somewhere to showcase their work is really, really important. I think it's uplifting to them, you know, sort of their mindset, to their work. It helps, you know, them network, because then eventually they might meet someone who knows someone. Yeah. You know, this applies, I think, in general, not just in our community, but I see this a lot. You know, I recently did a really interesting event in San Francisco at the Museum of the African Diaspora with, you know, representatives of, you know, the Black food justice community and the Native American food justice communities. And I think they have the same sorts of struggles, right? Their voices aren't mainstreamed and aren't highlighted and aren't centered. And it's, I think, even worse, right, in our community, and especially with women, right? So thank you. for the
you do
chance.
speaking engagements too. We didn't get to mention that. So
Yeah,
you go around the world and in other states
I
too.
do. Yeah.
How, if somebody wants to book you as a speaker, where do they go? The website?
You can go to my website,
Okay.
www.laila.com. It's my name,
Yeah.
LAILAHADDAD.com. And I have a link there to where you can get in touch with me or
Great.
book me.
Okay. We'll put that in the comment section too. So yeah.
Yeah, I do things. I do obviously public speaking. I do big events, but I also do workshops. So I've done
Mhm.
workshops before for everything from schools to like churches to, where I do this sort of thing, right? I sometimes it's almost like using food as a vehicle to be able to discuss the situation in Palestine and so on. So it's not always just sort of strictly food centric, but I'm always more than happy to make it that if that's what you want.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Leila.
Welcome.
Inshallah, maybe you can come back again another time. You owe me an experts column piece, so don't
I
forget
know.
about that.
Well, I'm happy to say I had, as an experiment, planted some golden dragon fruit seeds, and they
Okay.
actually are coming out. So I'm super
That
excited.
would be a great article. So I'll be looking for that. All
Let's
right.
see. Let's see.
All right.
All right,
Take care,
inshallah.
Leila.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to all of our viewers for following another edition of the Daily Dose. Again, we'll be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll replay these videos in the evening. And stay connected to us through our website, www.care.com, and also our brand new newsroom, carenewsroom.com. We have articles from the experts, just the facts, opinion pieces, and we, keeping you up to date even with the latest information on the coronavirus. So please head there if you haven't. If you like this video, like it, and come back again tomorrow, inshallah. We look forward to engaging with you. And lastly, if we haven't covered a topic that's in our wheelhouse yet that you really want us to cover, send us interact with us online or send us an email and let us know. We are always looking for ways to bring the information to you in the way that you want it to be delivered. So please continue to interact with us. And again, thank you for joining the show. We'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.